Welcome to Sportsball Roundup. Now here's your hosts, Devin and Reese.
Thank you, and yes, welcome to Sportsball Roundup. I am Devin, and instead of my co-host for this special NASCAR episode, we have Randy.
Hi. Hello.
Yeah. Hey, Randy. I thought since we are doing a sports podcast, we should include all sports. And what person that I know is more knowledgeable than NASCAR than you are? And so,
I try my best.
And so I just, we're in the middle of NASCAR playoffs. And first and foremost, for those of you who aren't familiar with NASCAR and don't know much about it, tell us a little bit about kind of like formats and how playoffs work in NASCAR.
Okay, well, firstly, Reese is literally just standing like right over there, so he's still here in spirit. He's just not on a microphone.
No,
right now.
yeah, I don't have 3 mics, or else I'd get him on. So
yeah, I know we're just messing with Reese. Anyway, so yeah, the NASCAR playoff format. There's a lot. I mean, respectfully, if you're new to it and you just dive right in, it's gonna take a little bit to understand it. So basically the way that they do it is they have, for your playoff format, is you have 16 different drivers who qualify for the championship playoff, which takes place over the last 10 races. The way that you qualify for that over the first 26 races of the year, which go from February through August, something like that, is if you win a race, you're locked in the playoff. There's almost nothing that can knock you out at that point unless you physically cannot race, which we'll get to that later. But, and if you don't win, there are spots available to those who can lock in on points, which you earn over the course of the entire year. So this year was a bit different because, obviously I mentioned 16 spots available.
right.
Well, when they did that, I don't think they anticipated having 19 different people win over the course of 30 races.
Wow. So a win equals a lock into the playoffs?
Yeah.
So therefore, on normal circumstances, that
correct.
would be 19 people locked into the playoffs.
Well, the playoffs have been going on for like 5 weeks already. So we had like 3 different new people win since the playoffs started.
Right.
But there was a long while where we were thinking that we were going to get 17 different winners in the first 26 races, which that would have caused chaos because you would have had people who won a race back in March, for crying out loud, who would have been like, oh crap, I thought I'd been okay for 3 months to make the playoff, and all of a sudden I'm not.
Right.
So it would have been chaotic. We didn't get to that point, but it was close. And I don't think NASCAR ever anticipated having that problem. But on one end it's a problem because, on the other hand, it's fantastic because you have parity up the wazoo. I mean, I don't recall when I've been watching and actually been old enough to comprehend it, a time where they had that many different people win. I think the record for the most number of winners in a season was 19, and that was 2001.
Wow.
And they still have 5 races left, and there are 3 people I can think of off the top of my head right now who I would not be surprised if they still won a race yet.
Right, and they haven't. They've gotten in on points.
Yeah, well,
so far.
One of them actually didn't make it in on points because it was a whole thing there for a while, for like the last 3 weeks of the regular season, because you had 2 different people in Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex who were top 5 in points but hadn't won a race.
Right.
So they were not locked in, and at that point we had 15 different winners. So one of those 2 who were top 5 in points again,
right,
were not going to make the playoffs, while we had a person who was 18th in points who had won a race earlier this year.
Yeah.
So So it's a very much it's a good thing, because if you're really good over the course of the year, you don't have to worry about it. But there is a factor, unlike most other sports in NASCAR, where someone can just randomly win out of thin air, and you have someone who may or may not deserve to be in a playoff spot who has a playoff spot because they won a race, and sometimes it just literally falls into their lap.
Right.
So
right. Can you give me an example of somebody that had that happen? Kind of, because you said that that has happened. So can you give me an example of somebody?
So this didn't lock this driver into the playoffs because the playoffs had already started. But the most recent example of this would have been at Darlington on Labor Day weekend. Let's see. If I remember correctly, it was Martin Truex and Kyle Busch. Those two had dominated the race. Like, those two basically been taking turns leading. It was those two, and then it was everybody else. And in the last 40 laps, they both had mechanical failures, one right after the other. Kyle Busch blew up a motor under caution. I have never seen that before in my life. And basically what just ended up happening is, okay, after Kyle, because the caution came out for Truex having a mechanical failure, which caused him to crash. And then Kyle had a motor failure while they were under caution. So now all of a sudden you have Eric Jones, who is driving a car that had been running 15th the majority of the year, but he's very good at Darlington.
Yeah.
So he was out running what his equipment is typically capable of, which is something that you like to see in your driver.
Yeah.
But so he's just sitting there minding his own business in third. Was going to have a great night for a team that typically runs 15th, and then he just wins like he goes out there and he holds off 3 guys who had fresh tires and won the race, and I'm like, what on earth just happened? He just won in a underfunded car on pure pace. Like, what? But he had it handed to him
because the top two
had
mechanical failure.
Yeah,
right after the other.
Yep, like literally within 5 minutes of each other.
Wow. So let me get this straight. They were still under caution for Truex.
Yeah.
And then Busch blew up his motor during that caution.
Yeah. Like they're talking about the restart, and they're showing Kyle Busch on screen. All of a sudden, you start seeing smoke coming out the tailpipes. And I'm like, oh my god, he's blowing up.
Wow.
Like literally, and like everyone in the booth was just shocked because it just happened like out of nowhere.
Right.
Like they're just sitting there thinking, okay, what's he need to do to maintain the lead on the restart and win this race? And then all of a sudden, bam, there's smoke coming out the tailpipes, and he's going into the garage to end the night. And I'm like, whoa.
Right, and so that opened it up for
Eric
Jones to
win the race.
Win the race, and that's just stuff like that happens, and that's kind of why NASCAR's kind of since I've been, I guess, watching and paying attention because of what I do. I work for a station, so I pay attention. I'm master control, so I have to pay attention. And so, since I've been paying attention, I mean, it's crazy that, you listen to the announcers, and the person that should win, often doesn't.
No. Yeah, because it's. I mean, you have that happen quite a bit, like when you're watching, sports that have a ball, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. You're gonna have times where somebody plays an incredible game. A team plays incredibly well. They deserve to win, and then for whatever reason they don't.
Right.
But that is far less frequent than it is in NASCAR.
Right.
Because you have way more factors that can screw you over.
Exactly. So, you not only have other drivers that can outrun you, or I guess make it so you don't win, whether by bumping you or whatever and causing you to crash. You also have the car itself.
Yep.
That can just do weird things because it's mechanical.
Yeah, and you can come down pit road and you can commit a pit road penalty. So like you speed on pit road, or you have a slow pit stop, and that just puts you behind the 8 ball in it, and you think you're gonna win, and then something happens, and there's so many different things that can happen. Those, like, I see a lot in the when I'm like watching races with people, or you're sitting here, you're watching a live chat of a race that's on some sort of social media, and they would say, "Oh yeah, this one's done," and I'm like, "No, it's not. It's not." I mean, realistically, it might be, but you never know when someone's just when fate's just gonna throw a wrench because they're bored. I mean, it can happen at any moment. It's causes chaos all the time.
Right. Going forward, time to get out your crystal ball. Who do you think of the drivers that are left in the playoffs? Who do you think is going to end up with the cup at the end of the year?
Okay, so I mean, if I was a betting man, which I am not, I don't bet because chaos. But if I was a betting man, I would put money down on Chase Elliott winning the title, because he's been consistently the fastest guy all year, and he's the one who definitely deserves to win it. But like I said, in the way that this format works, sometimes the person who deserves to win it the most doesn't win because something happens to them. And it would not be the first time that that's happened with this playoff format, and it will not be the last. And I mean, that's part of the issue that a lot of people have with the playoffs in general, is because, for 50 years before that, they were running a season-long points total, that ran from February to November over 36 races.
Yeah.
And then there were quite a number of times where it was pretty well obvious with 3-4 races left who was going to win the championship. Mm-hmm. That happens quite a bit, but that's just part of racing. So, because sometimes somebody just decides to go out there and kick butt the entire year, and there's nothing anyone can do about it.
Right. And
then you have years where it's just a fierce battle for the whole year. Mm-hmm. But so when you split it down to the way that they have it now, because I mentioned how you get in,
right?
I don't mention how the whole thing works once you get into the playoffs.
Okay.
So you start with your 16.
Yeah.
Okay. So and they have 4 rounds out of the last 10 races. So it's 3 races, 3 races, 3 races, and then the final race.
Okay.
After the first 3 races, the bottom 4 in points are out.
Okay.
After the second 3 races, the bottom 4 in points are out.
Okay.
And then and then you get repeat the process until you're down to 4 people, where you go to the championship race in Phoenix, and whoever finishes highest amongst those 4 in the championship race wins the title. And more often than not, that's the person who ends up winning the race in general.
Right.
So there
is a scenario where the person that wins the race doesn't necessarily win the title.
Correct, because
kind of get into how that works.
Okay,
because that's a crazy concept for people that aren't NASCAR fans.
Yeah, so really the way that can just end up, throwing a whole wrench in is because you have the 4 championship contenders, that doesn't mean that the other 35 guys that run every week aren't racing. They're still out there, and they can have an effect on things. They can, somebody could go out there and, someone who's particularly good at Phoenix or has a really good car that day can just go out and stomp the field. And that would include the 4 that are racing for a championship. Mm-hmm. And okay, I mean, that person deserves to win that race. Good for you. And then we would just turn our attention to wherever the other 4 are running, whether that be second or 22nd.
Okay.
And then there's also the possibility that it's very far-fetched, but it's possible because you never know. It's possible that all 4 of the championship contenders going in the final race can crash on like the second lap.
Right.
And then and then the team that is able to repair their car the best and go out there and make laps without retiring from the race would end up winning the title.
Wow.
It's out there.
It is out there.
It's possible though.
Right.
And the way that this year is gone with tire failures, part failures, that kind of thing, it would be significantly more likely now than it has been at any point in the last decade.
Right.
Which kind of gets me into the little bit of a rant that I have right now.
Ooh, we always love rants.
I mean, I promised this to you before we started recording, so here you go.
Yep.
Okay, so NASCAR this year, they have a new car. It's officially titled the Next Gen car, and it's a very good looking car. But what they did is that they tried to level the playing field by making it to where, for the most part, it's a spec car. So every team has the same parts.
Okay.
And they all have to assemble it the same way. And for the most part, it's a spec car. So that would be like, it would be like if we went out and we were both driving the same make, model, year car, and then it would all just come down to who's
a better driver.
Yeah, which has come in really well for the most part on the on-track product, because you had more because even the guys who run in 32nd every week in a car that doesn't really have the speed to compete, that guy, if you put him in a competitive car, can go out and win a race.
Yeah.
The talent pool is so deep from top to bottom. Like if you're like, you can sit there and you can make jokes about how this guy is struggling and he's having some crashes and all that kind of stuff, but that guy is still a better race car driver than 95% of the population of this country. So probably closer to 99.
Right.
But so in that regard, it's worked wonderfully, because it's made it a lot more competitive. And when the racing this year has been good, it's been dang good. It's been outstanding, like some of the best stuff I've seen in a decade. Yeah. But when it's been bad,
it's also been really bad.
So the first issue that this car has is it is not as safe as it needs to be.
Okay.
In terms of,
I guess what is different about this next gen car that doesn't make it as safe?
So, I mean, really, what this is, it's simple physics. So, what they've done with the new car is they've really beefed up the structural integrity of the front and particularly the rear bumpers. So they've made those really tough. So, so last year, somebody could, you would run into the back of somebody after they had to slow up because somebody spun in front of them, and they hit the brakes and the car behind it didn't see it, because the only thing they were looking at is the back bumper of the car in front of them. Years past, that would demolish the front end of your car. And depending on how hard you hit them, it would also demolish the rear end of the other person's car. Yeah. That's not the case this year, because those cars are have very good structural integrity. Yeah. But the reason that that's a bad thing is because
the energy's got to go somewhere.
Correct. And if the car is not crumpling on an impact, the car isn't the person that is taking the energy from that impact. It's the driver. That's a problem. That's a major problem. And So what has been a real issue has been, like, the car does really well when it's a really bad accident. Like, that's been tested a bit more times than I care to admit. The problem has been what last year would have been a minor incident. So, for example, the ones that have been the real problem have been when somebody loses control of their car in the corner, they slide up the track and they go back into the car first into the wall. Last year, or the previous car, if you did that, the back end of the car would crumble. Depending on how hard they crashed, it would turn a something that looks like a sedan into something that looks like a hatchback.
Right.
So you kind of catch my drift of how much the car would crumple.
Right.
This year, it's not doing that. So the car is maintaining its structural integrity, and all that energy that in years past would crumple the back end of the car up like a piece of paper is now going to the driver.
Right.
And that has caused a problem because there have been 2 different people who are playoff drivers this year who are currently not in the car because they suffered a concussion in an accident like the one I described.
Where in years past it would be your car's gone, but you're still in one piece.
And not only would they be fine, they would be like, get the backup car ready, let's go out there and run again.
Yeah.
And they'd be back out on the track within an hour.
Yeah.
And now this year, twice in the last couple of months, that's led to someone getting a concussion and being out of the car.
Yep, and remaining out of the car for at least the rest of the race, if not more.
Oh yeah, because Kurt Busch, who's a former series champion, he crashed in qualifying at Pocono in the way that I described. Lost control in the corner, back into the wall.
Yep.
In August, suffered concussion, has not been back in the car since.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Alex Bowman crashed out at Texas in the exact same way 3 weeks ago. Has not been in the car since with a concussion.
You hate to see it because like those crashes, like you said, could have been, or not avoidable, but the outcome could have been avoidable.
Yes. And that's why the drivers are PO'd.
They're livid about that.
They're very angry. Like the thing is like, there's a decent amount of them that, they, for the most part, they just kind of mind their business. They're not, they're quiet people. They're like, I'm just going to let my driving do the talking instead of me doing the talking. And even them are like basically bad mouthing
this new design.
Yeah. And the series for approving it.
Yeah.
Because apparently that they knew that going in and didn't really make much of a change of it.
Didn't really address that issue
until people started getting hurt, which is not real. Which to the people who are going out there every week and driving a car, because yes, you can get injured, playing football, playing basketball, and all that kind of stuff, but the odds of you going to the hospital and being severely hurt, like they're worried about you living in a football game, is low.
Very low. Yes.
The odds of that happening in a while driving a race car are still low, but the odds of that are way higher than they are in a football game.
Yeah.
So safety is number one important thing. And when that doesn't feel like it's being met, the drivers are mad, the teams are mad, the fans are mad, everyone's mad. That's you cannot mess with that because
we don't want to see anything happen.
We don't want to see drivers getting hurt. We don't want to because many of the people who who watch NASCAR, they've been around for decades, and they remember, 30, 40 years ago when people getting hurt, like getting seriously hurt and being killed was a regular occurrence.
Right.
And that's not something that we want to go back to, because they've made so much progress in safety over the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly feeling like they took a significant step backward, and that's not
okay.
No, it's not. And that's got a lot of people really upset. So, myself included. Mm. And it's not helped because there's been a decent number of times, and this is kind of the next part of the rant. So you have all that about how the car isn't as safe as some of the people think that it needs to be. Mm-hmm. So you would think with that they would be like, okay, let's not do something silly to put the drivers at risk more than they already are. And then they just decide this one. Oh my gosh, I was so mad. Like I'm being a bit more PG than I was at the time. I was dropping curse words left and right when this happened. But yeah, at Daytona back at the end of August, they were running that race because it was supposed to be on a Saturday night, but as it does like literally almost every day in Florida during the summer, it rained. Mm-hmm. So that it got postponed to Sunday afternoon. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Mm. There was a threat of rain the entire afternoon while they were running this race, and it was close enough to the track where you could see it. Yeah, and you could see it coming. Mm-hmm. And like they had a TV shot it was from their helicopter camera, which is flying above the track. Yeah, and you can see the rain coming from behind the front stretch grandstands, and it's close. So I'm talking like within a couple miles. Right. And they're out there running. And as you know, and anyone else can, if they just go and watch any race from Daytona, they run in a pack where they're closer than you park in a parking lot going $190. Yeah. And slick tires do not run on slippery surfaces, including when a track is getting rained on. Yep. You kind of see where I'm going here?
Yeah, but NASCAR kept them going.
Yeah, too long, and it rained on the track, and they all crashed.
Yeah, that's something that I mean, come on, you can avoid that.
Oh my gosh, because it was obvious, because when 3 different people in 3 different lines all just spin out on their own without getting bumped from behind, you know dang well why they crashed. It's because the track was wet.
Yeah, and
when you're running in a pack of 25 cars and the person in the front of it loses control and spins out, everybody else is coming.
Yeah, and then so where exactly were they in the race? Like
there was about 20 laps left when that
20
happened.
Laps left. So I guess what is the procedure? If they would have stopped that race, would have they just called it and the winner's the winner?
Well, they red flagged the race for rain after this crash happened, and it took them about 2 hours to dry the track because Daytona is 2.5 miles long. Yeah. It's a giant piece of asphalt you got to dry off. Right. So it took them a while, but they finished the race because it was important. Because they had to figure out, because there were playoff spots on the line here. You
can't just call a race like that.
Yeah, especially when the track has lights. And they were originally intending on running this race at night. You kind of have to finish it because otherwise people feel like they're going to get screwed. Right. It's the most fair way of doing it, but which is kind of an oxymoron to say after they just let everybody go racing in the rain and they all crashed. Right. Man. And the thing was that there were so many people that crashed like bad. Like it wasn't like everyone just went on a nice little slip and slide. No, they all crashed bad. Like half of those cars were junk. Like they were just demolished. And I'm like, they could have gotten somebody seriously hurt there. Yeah. I hope those drivers go in there and lay it on them. Yeah. Like, curse them out. And a few of them did, and they deserved it. But I was so mad at that one.
Yeah.
Especially, with people that are when
Playoff implications.
Yeah, and also you have somebody who is out because they got hurt. And there at that point there was those safety concerns at that point. And I'm like, what are they doing?
Right.
Why?
Right.
Like, I just don't get that.
Right.
So that's the first of the issues that have been going on the last few weeks. So that's one. Okay. The second is they've been racing on some pretty tough tracks that are pretty tough on equipment and on drivers. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, you kind of want that as a fan because you want to see them like push themselves
and their equipment to the absolute max. Yeah.
Well, they had not run at Darlington or at Bristol, which are two of the toughest tracks that NASCAR races on by a long shot with that new car. And when they got there were part failures galore. It was so you had everybody, you had a bunch of drivers who got screwed out of really good results or wins because of mechanical failures. And I'm going to go ahead and quote one of them when they said, and you may have to edit this one, but they said crappy ass parts. On live television. Yeah. I'm like, oh boy.
I actually think I saw that. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh.
I think you were watching that one.
Yeah.
But so you have that, and then you have the race at Texas where you had so many tire failures, which caused so many accidents.
What is that attributed to? Is that the quality of the tire or the quality of the track?
Well, in the case of Texas, it would be both.
Okay.
Because that track is not particularly good to begin with, but the way that it's designed, it has one end has a lot like 10 degrees lower banking than the other one does. Yeah. So you have two radically different turns. Yeah. And then which each have their different how do I phrase this? Like their own challenges when it comes to a tire. And also how to set up the car so it doesn't burn through the tire. So it's a multiple part problem. And it's really all just a mess because when you have that tire failure, you crash. Yep. And that just goes back to the safety problem. So it's just a compounding problem. Yep. And it's like, and again, I know I've been bashing on them for like 15 minutes now, but when it's good, it's so good. Like like on the tracks where, like the Californias and the Kansas of the world, where they have multiple different lines that they can run in the corners and all that kind of stuff. Racing's been incredible. But on tracks that are tough on equipment, tracks that, and so like Darlington and Bristol, where they had those part failures, tracks that are hard on tires like Texas, tracks that have that inherent danger of crashing like Daytona and Talladega. Yep. Or it's not a good thing. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong like parts wise when it comes to Daytona and Talladega. It's just that impending sense of doom whenever somebody crashes. Yeah. Because it's going to happen. Right. The question is,
how many people are going to get caught up in it?
Yeah. And the question, and then the added part right now is everybody going to walk away from this? Right. Because I've seen enough to know when I need to be concerned about somebody's health. I mean, anybody who's listening to this can just go and search up Ryan Newman's crash in the 2020 Daytona 500. Yeah. Yeah. See, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Because you were watching that race with me. Yeah. And I watched that, but it was a horrible crash because I'll just paint a picture for anybody who's listening to this. What Newman was leading the Daytona 500, coming to the checkered, like literally less than 1,000 feet from winning, and he got hooked and he crashed. When he hit the wall with such force and with such speed that he ended up flipping the car on its roof and was sliding towards the finish line. And another car that was behind him couldn't get out of the way and hit him
while he was
upside down in the driver's door.
Mm-hmm.
At going at least 160.
Mm-hmm.
And like catapulted the car into the air. He finished the race 10 feet in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And then came back down and slid about another 1,000 feet to a stop while the car was burning.
Mm-hmm.
I watched that live. I thought he was dead. I'm not kidding.
Mm-hmm.
I had my stomach hit the floor. I was so concerned.
Right.
Because I'm like, oh my God, I just watched this man die. And the other part is that guy has 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 2 little kids at home.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, no. But that dude was lucky because he somehow, I don't know how, but that man only had a concussion from that.
Yeah.
But that man got so lucky because so the guy likes to collect cars.
Yeah.
As he does.
Yeah.
Because, everyone has to have a hobby.
Yeah.
So he kept the car that he almost died in.
The framework.
Oh, the whole thing. The car was completely junk. So basically, they just took what was left of it after he crashed it, and literally put it on a trailer and wheeled it up in his garage, and it's sitting there as it was.
Wow. Of that, the day of the crash.
Yeah. So you can peer in. Like, they have not touched it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only thing that was touched from where it was when the car came to a stop to where it was in his garage was to flip it over,
right,
back onto its wheels,
and to get it on a tow truck,
and also to jaws of life to get him out of the car because he was unconscious,
right.
And if you go and look up a picture of the guy, he's a big dude, so it's not like you're going to be able to just one guy's going to be able to lift him out of a car,
right?
But he has the helmet that he was wearing that day too.
Mm-hmm.
You have a headrest that's like right next to his head, and you have a little bit of space, the window net, and then outside.
Yeah,
you can see the scuffed paint, white paint from the white car that hit him on his green helmet.
Jeez.
How did he survive that?
With just a concussion.
I know. Like, how? That guy was so lucky, and he did the smart thing, and when he came back from that concussion, he ran the rest of the year and said, "I'm done."
Yeah.
He did the smart thing, and
yeah.
now he gets to basically just sit at home with his kids, race a car every now and again at a short track with wherever the heck he wants, and he gets to enjoy his life.
Yeah,
basically a second one because man, and the thing kind of circling back is, again, that crash was so violent. It was so violent.
Yeah.
That like everyone watching that, even if they weren't a fan, and they were like, "Oh crap."
Mm-hmm.
And he walked away with a pretty gnarly concussion. Well, he didn't walk away. He was knocked unconscious during the crash, but he survived the crash with with a concussion. Walked out of the hospital. That wreck happened on a Sunday. He walked out on Tuesday afternoon with his kids. So but again, repeating the point, that crash was so incredibly violent, and now you have people that are having a extremely tame incident compared to what that one was, and having the same injury.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
So
it seems like NASCAR's got some work to do to fix that one.
Yeah, they're working on it. I give them the credit that they know that they goofed, and they're trying to fix it because they have approved a redesign of the structural integrity of the bumpers, which they've tested, and I haven't seen published results yet because they don't publish those kinds of things. But the drivers talk, and about a topic like this where everyone's like fishing for answers, as they should. We've had a couple different drivers say that the G-forces incurred on the driver with the new design compared to one that they're racing this year is a cut of around 50 to 60%, which is a significant improvement, but it's still not as good as it was prior.
Right.
But if it's going to dramatically reduce the chances of somebody having a concussion from a relatively minor incident, I'm going to be all for it.
Good.
But
good. With the time that we have left, we don't have much time.
Okay.
Let's preview the rest of the playoffs. I guess what do you think is, I guess the if you had to pick one race out of the playoffs, which that is an absolute must tune in, besides the championship, obviously.
Yep.
Which one is it and why?
Okay, so they have 4 races left.
Yes.
They're at Las Vegas this weekend.
Yes.
Which is a 1.5-mile tri-oval. They have next week is Homestead, which is a 1.5 mile just straight oval. The difference is that Las Vegas is shaped like a D if you look at it from above, whereas Homestead is shaped more like a paperclip.
Okay.
That's the difference between those two.
Okay.
And then after that, they go to the track that's actually named the Paperclip in Martinsville, which is a little 1/2-mile little bull ring, which it literally looks like a paperclip. If you look at it from above. Long straightaways, very short, tight corner.
Yeah.
And then the championship race in Phoenix is after that.
Yeah.
The one that I am looking forward to the most is Homestead, or is the one in Miami.
Okay.
Because that track, you can run the very bottom of the track on the white line. You can run right up against the wall with the right side of the car, literally less than 6 inches away from the wall, and you can run everywhere in between. And the races that I've seen on tracks with multiple grooves this year have been the best ones this year.
Yeah.
So I think that one's is gonna be a slapper.
Okay.
I really do. Las Vegas will be pretty good because they had a race there earlier in the year, and that one was pretty good. I mean, was it like outstanding? No, but it was good. But Martinsville, it'll depend on what the playoff situation is like.
Yeah.
Because in years past, that race has been crazy. With all the playoff drama and just beating and banging on each other, but you never know what kind of stuff's going to go on this year. And that Phoenix, you obviously get your all of your championship drama. But if you just want to watch a really good race, Homestead's going to be your best bet in 2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to tune in for that. Thank you, Randy, for your time and
I gotcha.
And your expertise in the matter. I would have been kind of lost if it weren't for this half-hour special.
Yeah.
So
there's just a lot.
Half hour, more like 45 minutes now. But
there's just a lot of stuff that you have to go over, and if you're just getting into it, if you're getting into it, obviously I'm going to recommend this because this is a passion for me, but. Your best bet is going to be to have somebody who knows a thing or two to ask questions.
Yeah,
and that's
for us too. It's you.
Yeah, correct. Because anytime we watch a race together, you just bombarding me with questions.
Right. Yeah, but no better person than you to do this NASCAR special with. So I thank you, and for my co-host Reese Webb, who couldn't be here because I don't have a third mic.
He's just chilling in the next room waiting for him to talk.
Yeah. And for myself, Devin Taylor, this has been Sportsball Roundup. Have yourselves a wonderful day.